We have another political expert joining us now, Basil Smikle. Basil, can you hear us here?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. First of all, just what's your reaction to Governor Cuomo's announcement today so soon after the Attorney General's report was released?
Well, you know, I've been saying for some time that given the governor's, the position that the governor was in, the extent of the allegations, and having worked with a number of members of the Assembly and the Senate over the years, it looked like he was headed for removal from office. The Assembly, if you listen to or remember the press conference yesterday, the Assembly seemed pretty resolute that they had lost confidence in the governor and they were prepared to impeach and don't think he had the votes in the Senate to save him. And I expected he would want to go out on his own terms rather than be pushed out. And I think that's what you saw today. I hate that he did so, but also sort of attacked the victims and attacked the Attorney General's report, a report he asked for, and attacked the media on his way out. But you know, I expected him to go out on his own terms, and that's essentially what he did today.
And when it came to the timing of this, many had said he should have stepped down long before today. Were you surprised it took so long for him to step down? Was it the impending impeachment hearings? Do you believe it was the women coming out, Brittany Commisso coming out yesterday? What do you feel took him to this point to make this decision to finally step down?
I think it was a couple of things. You know, the governor, you know, and I was the executive director of the state Democratic Party, so, you know, I worked with him and members of his team and other electeds over time. And, you know, he is, as he talked about, a fighter. He's someone that is not going to give in to any media pressure or even pressure from some of his Democratic colleagues. And there are a lot of progressives in the state that didn't like him for that reason. So, you know, a lot of us fully expected him to push as long as he can or as hard as he could until he absolutely could not stay in office and weather the storm anymore. And it looks like we've actually hit that point. Again, it may have come yesterday when he heard from the Assembly that they were it seemed pretty clear that they were going forward with impeachment. He probably made some phone calls to state senators trying to find out if he could get some votes in his favor. That probably did not happen. The loss, as Marcia Kramer talked earlier about, that inner circle. You had a key member of his inner circle, Melissa DeRosa, resign, you know, and therefore a lot of the folks who had been close to him throughout his administration are no longer around to help him fight this battle. And he's also, you know, going up against, he's at a time where you have a very popular Attorney General in Tish James. You have a very popular state controller in Tom DiNapoli. It's not like him leaving would leave this phenomenal void in New York State. There are a lot of people who are ready to be in that position, whether it's Kathy Hochul or others, to leave the state. And I think looking at all of that and seeing the pressure coming from areas where he probably did not expect it before, all of that combined, the confluence of those events said, it's time to go.
You know, Basil, all through this, the governor had depended on support from members of the minority community in the legislature. Both African-American and Hispanic lawmakers tended to support him and appear at press conferences with him over the last several months. What happened to that support once the Attorney General's report came out?
I have to tell you, personally, I actually felt that I was bothered by that. I was bothered that so many of our communities and our leadership were so quick to embrace him after that report. But it's a common trope in politics. You know, you go to African-American communities of color to do the mea culpa, to get that absolution. But you know, owing to a point I was making before, you know, you have a very popular Attorney General, African-American, in Tish James, and those same leaders are not willing to stand with him. We're not willing to stand with the governor to attack her, which is essentially what he did today. You know, he went after the report, said that her staff was politically motivated. This was a report that he asked for. And now you're asking these very same leaders that you got to embrace you before to side with you against an attorney general who is also of color, who could be a governor at some point in the near future. And they're not, that's a bridge they're not willing to cross. I think the amount of the allegations, the number of allegations and their severity, again, something that these leaders are not willing to stand with him for. So, he ran out of places to go to get that kind of support. And actually, I'm quite thankful for that we didn't see those same scenes of that embrace this time around.
But, he was supported by a number of major leaders in the African-American community, Hazel Dukes, Mark Morial. Are those people today feeling like they did the wrong thing?
I don't know if they would feel that they were wrong in what they did earlier, because I think if I remember some of that language around their statement, it was, we don't like what we're hearing. He should resign if these allegations are proven true. That was sort of the common thread.
But Hazel Dukes called him my son.
Yeah, I know. Listen, again, a lot of that language and that imagery does bother me. And that's why I was upset when I saw all of that happen in that moment. But again, for a lot of African American leaders, this issue of due process is very, very important, and I understand that. And that's what they were calling for. But that's what actually took place. The Attorney General conducted the report, and in those findings, you have those very same leaders saying, "Look, you got your due process. This investigation had taken place. These are the findings." The African American leader of the Assembly, the African American leader of the State Senate, have come out with very strong comments about their lack of confidence in his leadership, and that's a bridge that folks like a Hazel Dukes and others are not willing to go against.
Basil.
And so, yeah, I think whatever we saw a few months ago, certainly it wasn't. They weren't going to be able to use that same language today.
Will there be support for Kathy Hochul, Basil? Where do you see allegiances lying when it comes to the governor? She's going to be taking office in 14 days. Will she have people behind her, or will they be staying on the sidelines?
Well, in some of Marcia's comments earlier, and what's been said about Kathy, she's a much better retail politician than Andrew Cuomo had been. She likes being out and about. She likes the glad handing. She is much better known upstate than she is downstate. And that was in some ways strategic on the governor's part earlier to make sure that she sort of had his back upstate. But having said that, going around to 62 counties, and when I was executive director of the party, I was at many events in counties across the state. She's incredibly popular. She's seen as a very strong leader with really great staff. I think she'll have a very different sort of tone in her administration than Andrew Cuomo did, and that will be widely highly regarded and highly respected by a lot of the leaders across the state. Seemingly much more accessible than Andrew Cuomo has been, and more fair. And I would also say this is an opportunity to cast a wider net, to bring in more of the progressive leadership throughout the state, which is something that Andrew Cuomo was reluctant to do over time. So remains to be seen. She's still unknown to a lot of New Yorkers, but this is going to be an opportunity to really do that retail politics that she's become very good at.
Basil, in the course of your career, you've been very active in the State Democratic Party, and the head of the State Democratic Party has just put out a statement, Jay Jacobs, saying that he is confident that incoming Governor Hochul's empathy, work ethic, and authentic concern for the welfare of the citizens will make her an outstanding governor to our state. Do you agree with that? And do you think that the county chairman of the 62 counties around the state will get behind her, or come December, January, decide to back a different candidate?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key question. First of all, with respect to Jay Jacobs, he actually, after that AG report came out very early and said that the governor should resign. So I imagine in his, in the work that he's done, he's probably been laying the groundwork with the 61 other, because he's chair of Nassau County, the 61 other county chairs, to try to, sort of smooth the path for Kathy Hochul to take over, and they become accepting of her in this new role. I would also say that there are a lot of progressive county chairs, Ulster County, other counties throughout the state, particularly eastern part of the state, where you have a lot of progressive leaders that have gotten involved in the party politics post-Bernie Sanders. And what I'm thinking about and looking for is that we have the governor's up for re-election next year. That primary is in June. That means the state party has to have a convention in February or March, and I expect that there will be multiple candidates vying for this office, and I imagine that one or two of them will be progressive candidates that progressives across the state are going to be putting forward. And what Kathy Hochul needs to do, and I think Jay Jacobs would be a big part of this, is to try to shore up a lot of that support for her going into the convention, which would take place early next year.
Basil, last question before we let you go. You worked closely with Governor Cuomo as head of the Democratic Party. Did these allegations come as a shock to you?
Oh, they come as a shock, and I actually just tweeted something about this, that unfortunately the first black governor of our state, the first black attorney general, and now the first woman to be governor of New York State will be coming after the scandals of white men in positions of power. So even though these particular allegations come as a surprise, it actually appears to be a much more systemic problem at the highest levels of government in our state, and that is not as surprising, but certainly still a shock.
And Basil, the governor has called for a seamless transition as we move to Kathy Hochul in the gubernatorial position. Are you confident that that can happen as we are in the midst of a bit of chaos, especially today?
Well, I do. I think having worked with Kathy and her team for a few years, and knowing that there are good people in government at the state level. And again, this is not just about the governor's inner circle. There is a whole bureaucracy of public servants that do really good work in the state. And while this might be a moment where they feel a little dejected, I think Kathy coming in and injecting some vigor into state government and sort of closing the door on one administration and really opening the door for her leadership, I think they should feel confident, and we voters and New Yorkers should feel confident that there are good people in state government that are going to continue to do the good work of getting us out of this pandemic and back on track.
Basil, what does Andrew Cuomo do from here? Avoiding impeachment, if he ultimately avoids impeachment by stepping down, it does leave the door open for him to possibly run for office again. Do you see that as any kind of a viable possibility?
Yeah. I mean, that is certainly possible. He resigns now. He's got a $20 million war chest that he may have to spend some of it defending himself from any criminal or civil accusations. But if a good chunk of that money is still available, he can still run. He can run again. As I said, that convention is not until February or so, February, March of next year. He can decide to forego all of the formalities that the state party would do, and then circulate petitions, get on the ballot, and run on his own. He can technically do that. The question is, will he, and will anybody actually vote for him?
Well, what do you think about that? Would anybody vote for him?
My guess is there's always going to be a percentage of New Yorkers that are still supportive of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do know.
And,
Basil, we wanted to thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us.